There is a tense and unsettling mood at the start of the film. To address the situation, Ranger Mike leads his crew to the location. As Mike cautiously makes his way to the loader where the insane dog is chained, Neil, one of the Rangers, is told to have his revolver ready. Mike carefully opens the loader door, but the dog attacks him ferociously as soon as it swings open. Mike yells for Neil to fire in shock, but Neil is totally unaware of the danger since he is preoccupied with an eagle flying overhead. Until a distant gunshot strikes the dog. Another ranger, Gibson. The attack severely damaged Mike's shoulder. Neil immediately uses the wireless to summon their medical officer, Helen, for assistance. Mike resists medical attention despite his wounded and is adamant on returning to the headquarters. Mike gives Gibson instructions to dispose of the dog's body before they depart. Mike and Neil pass a signboard with a missing persons report for Neil's son Ben as they make their way back. Neil becomes even more depressed upon seeing Ben's photo. Seeing that his colleague is upset, Mike suggests that Neil take a break to spend time with his wife Abby and deal with his loss. Helen carefully applies ointment to Mike's wounds back at headquarters. Olivia, Mike's daughter, bursts into the room, clearly distressed by her father's state. Neil, meantime, sits by himself and appears dejected. Olivia walks over to him and gives him Ben's watch, a memento of their past together. Olivia and Ben were close friends, and she is also in mourning at Ben's disappearance. Gibson drives Neil home as instructed by Mike. Gibson uses small chat to try to cheer Neil up during the ride. Abby, Neil's wife, is dozing off on the couch when they get home. Photographs and souvenirs of their son are piled high on the table next to her. Her anguish is obviously overwhelming her. She refuses to take her son Ben's possessions off the table and clings to them. When Neil awakens the following morning, Abby is still dozing off on the couch. He stealthily departs the house to go hiking, finding comfort at Malachi Point, a beautiful location they used to frequent with Ben. Neil sits by himself and remembers the times he spent with his kid. He starts a cigarette and considers taking his own life in the present. He is about to lift his rifle beneath his chin when he hears someone yell, "Dad!" The air is suddenly broken by a girl's scream. A girl is drowning in the river when Neil looks down. He jumps into the water without thinking and yanks her to safety. However, Neil is confronted with a terrifying scene as he flips her over. The girl's eyes are frighteningly strange, and her face is partially charred and damaged. She snarls like an animal as she opens her eyes and lunges at Neil. In a desperate attempt to murder her, he seizes a nearby rock and slams it into her horrifying face. Neil also sees two boys who resemble zombies coming toward him. He runs home in terror. Neil rushes through the door and yells for Abby to prepare to go, but Abby doesn't wake up. The two zombie boys are getting closer to the house when Neil opens the drapes. The ammo bins are empty when he looks for rounds. Abby had taken out the bullets earlier because she was worried that Neil would hurt himself. The house is suddenly broken into by one of the zombie boys. Neil stabs the zombie in the neck with a piece of the broken lamp, forcing it to collapse. Neil fends off another zombie that breaks into the house. He strangles the thing with a rope until it perishes. Abby is swiftly seized by Neil, who then hurries her to the vehicle. Abby is frozen in terror as he describes the terrifying experience with the undead. When Neil abruptly stops as he passes Morning Rock's cross, he barely avoids a gang of zombies who are attacking one another. When Neil gets home, he locks up and goes inside to get supplies. Abby is gone when he returns. In a panic, Neil looks about the house and discovers her sobbing over Ben's possessions. Clinging to the notion that Ben will come back, Abby won't leave. Neil reassures her and persuades her to go. The car's fuel runs out while they are driving. While filling up the tank at a gas station in the bush, Neil tells Abby to remain vigilant. Gibson, in the meantime, finds Neil at Malachi Point. He is horrified and concerned when he finds the dead girl's body in Neil's lighter. A frightening zombie poses as a guard and ambushes Neil back at the petrol station. Neil avoids the zombie's attack as it lunges at him from a pillar. During a heated battle, Neil douses the zombie with fuel from a gas dispenser and lights it on fire. Abby is startled by Neil's abrupt appearance as he rushes back to the car. Before continuing their trip, they make the drive back to the station to get food and beverages. Gibson's anxiety is heightened when he arrives to Neil's residence and discovers the dead zombies. He attempts to reach Neil through wireless, but gets no answer. In search of protection, Neil and Abby arrive at Mike's residence. Neil calls for Mike and his wife, Camilla. He discovers Camilla chopping meat in an odd way and acting weirdly in the kitchen. She turns to Neil and looks at him coldly when he shouts her name. He is horrified to learn that Camilla has also become a zombie. Without any delay, Neil reloads his firearm. Neil quickly takes aim and fires the gun. Camilla dies from the shooting, lying on the ground motionless. Olivia, now a bloodthirsty zombie, runs for Neil with unbelievable speed before he can even grasp what has just happened. Abby enters the house to regain his breath, only to discover Neil standing there, pointing his gun at Olivia. Abby, horrified, hurries to stop him and begs him not to shoot. Mike, another zombie plague victim, appears out of the shadows before Neil can move. In an attempt to subdue Neil, he firmly grasps him. Abby is yelled at by Neil to shoot. However, Olivia pulls Abby out of the house before she can do anything. Neil snatches up something close by and hits Mike. Neil seizes the opportunity and, in self-defense, shoots Mike, instantly killing him. Neil runs outside in a desperate attempt to locate Abby. He sees Olivia chasing after her as she runs wildly. After a furious disagreement, he recalls his son Ben storming out of the house. Ben abruptly disappeared from the recollection as Neil pursued him. Ben reappears a few moments later, yelling at Neil and referring to him as Dad. Neil looks at him in confusion. Ben has horrific injuries on the right side of his face, making him look like a zombie. Neil is pushed by Ben, and as he becomes more unconscious, the memory disappears. Neil's head aches from the wound as he wakes up in the morning. He strains to stand as blood runs down his face. He looks around and sees the rangers from the forest wandering the jungle, now transformed into zombies. When one of the ranger zombies spots him and starts to move toward him, he is overcome with fear. With his heart racing, Neil turns and sprints farther into the woods. He swiftly sets a red flag-marked trap after stumbling upon it. The ranger zombie enters the trap and is captured as it rushes toward him. Neil uses the diversion as an excuse to get away. Neil sees a car as he emerges from the woods and rushes in its direction. He discovers Abby searching through supplies close to the car. Neil approaches her with relief but caution, only to discover that she has also turned into a zombie. His heart laden with grief, he ties her up in the back seat of the automobile. Neil begins driving, although he still has a lot of problems. Determined to capture him, a ranger zombie pursues the vehicle. Neil moves the car with quick thinking and rams it into the zombie, knocking it to the ground. Neil pauses for a moment to use the wireless radio to transmit a message. He explains that he needs help immediately because his wife is infected. After hearing Neil's appeal, fellow survivor Gibson answers and inquires as to Neil's whereabouts. Neil reveals that he intends to seek safety at the Wolf Pass Tower and is on his way there. Neil cuts the transmission and drives on, but he runs into a barrier the Rangers have put up. He drives through after shooting the barrier's lock, only to discover additional zombie Rangers in the area. Neil continues to move forward in spite of the danger. Neil parks the car as he approaches the tower and carefully exits. He looks at Abby, who is becoming worse, growling ominously from the back seat. In order to examine the Ranger checkpost, Neil braces himself and ascends the tower. A zombie Ranger shows up and aims a gun at him as he looks around. Neil takes swift action and shoots the zombie after disarming it. Neil calls for medical help using the wireless radio within the tower. He feels a rush of melancholy as he discovers a report about Ben's disappearance while scouring the neighborhood. When Neil gets back to the automobile, Abby's condition has gotten worse. She had dark blood dripping from her mouth and rotting teeth. As Neil leaves, he sends Gibson another message to let him know how Abby's doing. Gibson tells Neil to go home and says he'll see him there. Neil rushes home excited, but sees police cars outside. He gets out and looks for John. He also ties his wife's hands with zip ties to stop her from attacking. As he walks toward the house, zombie police officers start surrounding him. Neil raises his gun at John, sure that there's no way to save him now. Just then, it's revealed that these people aren't zombies. There's no virus or outbreak. It's all in Neil's head. He sees that he looks like a zombie too. In real life, Abby is crying and begging him to stop, saying everything will be okay. Flashbacks appear. The people Neil saw in the park as zombies were actually just normal people having fun. The chief and his wife, the woman at the lake, her two friends, and the gas station boy. They were all regular people, but to Neil they looked like monsters. Another flashback shows the day Ben vanished. Neil is chasing him, trying to talk. Ben slips and falls off a tall cliff. Neil yells in pain and runs down to help. He finds Ben's clothes but can't find him. In truth, Ben was there, coughing blood and dying from the fall. Neil's mind blocked him out from seeing Ben. This trauma also caused his mind to see others as monsters. Abby keeps talking to Neil, who still holds the gun, ready to shoot. John quickly shoots, saving Abby, even though he loses his best friend, who was like a brother to him. It's so tragic how trauma can change how we see things, what we do, and what we fail to see.